How you doing, man?
We thank you so much, Dante Benford from the Student Success Center, Tougaloo College, home of the Bulldogs. We appreciate you joining us today. We got a room full here at Velma Jackson High School, and we're recording this
Okay.
for Rosa Scott, your alma mater, Ridgeland High School and Germantown High School, and for our YouTube channel. And we've been in the education and training career cluster and talked about some of the things you guys do over there, and and looked at the Student Success Center website. Really interesting. We got some great questions we're going to get to.
Okay.
But love to hear about your background and what all you guys do over there for the students and how you got into this and how they can get involved.
Okay, fantastic. And again, thank you for having me this morning. I have two other team members who will be joining. One will be Jason Gibson. He's one of our student success coaches here. We work together to help, extend our orientation beyond the actual physical orientation for first-year students throughout the course of their entire freshman year. Then I'll have Dr. Diva Whalen. She's a professor of biology here at Tougaloo College. She's also a Tougaloo alum as well, graduate of Clinton High School, who will be joining us to talk about how she assists first-year students in the classroom in a more content-specific area, such as biology, in contrast to what we do, myself and Coach Gibson, with our first-year experience program. So with the student success program, I see Diva's popping in now. If it's okay, I'll give her a moment so she can introduce herself. Good morning, Dr. Whalen.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be seen. How are you all doing?
Really good. Thank you for coming.
Yes, most definitely.
So I did just take a moment to kind of talk about you all. So I would like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and give your background.
Okay. I am Dr. Diva Whalen. I am an assistant professor of biology at Tougaloo College. I graduated Tougaloo in 2015, and directly after, I went to Meharry Medical College and earned my PhD. And so from 2015 to 2022, or like 2021, because I defended in December, I studied at Meharry Medical College with an emphasis in biochemistry and cancer biology. And so right now, I have a grant with Gilead Pharmaceuticals, and we're trying to actually survey the Mississippi Delta region and the urban Mississippi region and identify what type of risk factors actually lend themselves to African-American women developing triple negative breast cancer. And so that's the long or the short of, like, I guess, my academic journey. But other than that, I'm just regular old person. So
just for those, that's a heck of a resume, but just for those who don't know, Meharry Medical Institute is a HBCU medical school in Nashville. It's one of the few HBCU medical schools in the country, and they do a great job. They have some great doctors and other medical professionals come out of there.
Indeed they do. So yes, it's Meharry, Howard, and Morehouse.
So I think Coach Gibson is getting ready to log in, but in the meantime, I'll take a moment to introduce myself. As Coach Pygott stated, I'm a 2006 graduate of Ridgeland High School. After such, I attended Tougaloo College, where I attended on a baseball scholarship, majored in mass communications, and graduated in 2010. After graduation from there, I attended the University of Southern Mississippi, similar to Coach Pygott, where I earned a master's degree in public relations in 2012. And then in 2013, I came back to Tougaloo to serve as an adjunct instructor in the Department of Mass Communications. And then in 2015, I was brought on full-time as a faculty associate for our first year experience program. And then in 2015, I enrolled in the doctoral program at Jackson State University and finished there in 2020. I also currently serve as the assistant baseball coach and recruiting coordinator here at Tougaloo College. So we wear multiple hats around here. And fortunately enough for me, God saw fit to align my passion for education as well as baseball. And collectively, I'm able to serve in dual capacities here. So it's quite a blessing.
Yeah, and you've had a couple of our Velma Jackson alumni come through there recently. Mallory White, who graduated last year, and then Malcolm Walker, who's there currently. He's a Phi Beta Sigma. And the Tougaloo Singers, great choral program. He's also a Velma Jackson alum. So you got two of our best over there.
Oh wow! Okay.
Okay, give me just a sec. We're trying to get Coach Gibson in, and we'll be ready for any questions that you all have, unless Coach Parker, you want us to start with just some general information about what we do here at Tougaloo.
Now, on the student success program, is it something new? Because even though Tougaloo is a smaller university, and it's still college, adjusting to college is hard for anybody.
Right.
It's at a small campus of around about 1,000 students at Tougaloo, or if it's at a USM where there's 17,000. So why is it important for these type of programs to be there for kids coming in as freshmen, especially if they're coming in from a small school like Vilma Jackson, like we have?
The student success program, and more specifically, the first year experience portion of that program, is essential for their transition because, my first question I ask students in class, because we teach a student success seminar course, which is a 2-hour course. We teach it on Mondays and Wednesdays for 50 minutes each week. And one of the first things I ask on the first day is, what's the difference between a high school senior and a college freshman? Wow. And immediately they all, responsibility and this, that, and other. And I say, in reality, it's only 3 months. 3 months ago, you were a high school senior, and now you're a college freshman. It's just a difference of a title. But, one thing about transition is that you see it multiple times throughout your life when you're transitioning from elementary school to middle school, from middle school to high school to college. And even that transition period from high school to from college to graduate school, and maybe just into the workforce, is a quite daunting experience, and it can be very overwhelming. So for us and our team, we pride ourselves on being able to offer assistance not only with academic transition, but social transition as well, helping students to understand what it's like to be have a little more flexibility when you're no longer living at home. We do financial literacy here. We do our best to make sure that our students are socially and civically engaged. In addition to that, we help them get acclimated to the culture of Tougaloo through our history and legacy of the institution model, so that they can truly understand how they'll be a part of, what we champion here is our motto, where history meets the future. So it is very essential to have such programs to assist students, again, because we still have a lot of first generation students who are entering college. And surprisingly, with the vast availability of higher education, we're still interacting with a unique group of students who are first generation. And so for that reason, these programs are absolutely essential, despite how big or small an institution may be.
Yeah, and I think that's important to note, that history of Tougaloo just cannot be. There's not enough pages to write it. I'm hearing myself. There's not enough pages in a book to write it. Just all the history that's there then and now. And I think the president of Tougaloo, she was on the news last week with a story of the soccer program that's coming over there. And I thought she had a great quote. She said, "We are historically Black, but we're not exclusively Black." So that just goes to show that, it's important for these young people watching now, watching later, that there's a lot that Tougaloo has to offer. And it's a lot of things that a smaller school can offer that a larger school cannot. I mean, obviously there's pros and cons of both. And also there's things that a HBCU can offer that a PWI cannot. And I know, Dante, you went to, you've done both. And I love hearing thoughts on people that have attended both. So when it comes to things an HBCU has versus what a PWI has, what are some of the things that both of them have that can be a pro and a con for somebody coming out of high school?
Okay. In the interim, are we allowed to go ahead and introduce or allow Coach Gibson, because he actually is he completed his master's thesis on the history of Tougaloo at Jackson State University. So if we are able to give him the floor to introduce himself, that'd be fantastic.
What's going on, y'all? My name is Jason Gibson, student success coach at Tougaloo College, graduate from Holmes Community College, Jackson State University, with a master's thesis in student activism and inclusion from Tougaloo College from the years 1960 to 1964. And yeah, excited to be with you guys today.
That's awesome. And that was a crazy time in Tougaloo's history for people that read. I read Ann Moody's book in high school, and I was just, all the stuff going on then in the 60s was incredible at Tougaloo, and all the stuff with Medgar Evers, just unbelievable stuff going on.
So to answer your question, and I think actually both of our other team members who here present can speak uniquely about their experiences. For me, transitioning from what Ridgeland High School at that time was predominantly white. I think it may have been like a 70-30, maybe really an 80-20 demographic there. And for me, transitioning from, I went to JPS for middle school, then of course went to Madison County schools at Ridgeland. And one thing I will say about attending high school is that you're only, how do I phrase it? You're only exposed to what you see on a day-to-day basis. You know, your mind didn't really captivate all that is going on around you. And so for that reason, Ridgeland High School was fantastic because even though it was, the demographics weren't split completely, or it was not an overwhelming majority of Blacks that attended the school, the atmosphere was great. It was fantastic. Yet transitioning to Tougaloo, where again, it's predominantly Black, it's not exclusively, but it did provide a sense of home, if that makes sense, because no matter where I traveled, no matter what classroom, even being on a baseball field, I felt comfortable because, again, the person next to me looked like me. And then if I continued to look down the line, those persons look like me as well. And, especially going on in this day and time, representation matters is a phrase that we've heard very commonly over the last few years. And that was a big difference. And so specifically about the things that HBCUs can offer, it is an opportunity to literally celebrate culture every day. Unfortunately, I had a gentleman once before who attended Ole Miss. He's one of my peers. He stated that, I lacked culture, or that I lacked exposure to culture because I attended an HBCU. And as I told him, respectfully, I said, you may have spent 4 years working to assimilate to a culture, whereas I was able to embrace one. And then diversity exists on multiple levels. There's a vast, if you look at Mississippi, at North Mississippi versus South Mississippi, and even Central, there's a big diversity, big group of diversity, So for that reason, one of the things I love about our curriculum here at Tougaloo, we offer a course called Diaspora Studies, and it absolutely explores the Black diaspora in so many different aspects, from the humanities aspects, from the social science aspects, as well as natural sciences. And so again, you have those unique opportunities where you're at an HBCU where your culture, or what the culture that you derive from, is put on full display and is celebrated throughout. But again, I think Dr. Whalen and Coach Gibson could speak about their experiences as well.
Well, I also went to a predominantly white high school. So I went to Clinton High before Clinton High became 50-50. And so one of the things that my mother and my father just asked us to do was go to a HBCU first, right? And we could do anything else afterwards, but just go to a HBCU, because they understood that there were a lot of very interpersonal skills that maybe a Black professor could give you versus a white professor could give you, right? And what I realized is that I was being taught at the same level of academia as someone from Harvard, someone from a PWI, because when I went to Meharry, that's where they were from, right? A lot of the students were not from HBCUs. They were actually from all across the country. And what I realized is that, yes, the same biochemistry that I was taught was taught at Harvard, was taught at an Ivy League school. And all of us had a sense of, oh my goodness, I'm struggling, right? In this graduate level. So all of us had to step up. All of us had to get to a different level. But what I realized is that and sometimes, they say that HBCUs lack resources. But what I realized is the way that I was able to study, the way that I learned how to go to YouTube University, the way that I spoke to my professors and said, hey, could I come in for office hours, was unique and very, very different from that of a PWI student. Whereas with them, they were almost like, well, we should just be taught extra. And it's like, oh no, sometimes you have to go and like interact and get that interpersonal skills that were taught at an HBCU that weren't necessarily taught at a PWI. And then also our sister school for Meharry was Vanderbilt. And so I got a lot of interaction with Vanderbilt graduate students all the time. And what I realized again is that all of us were here trying to get a PhD, right? All of us were here, we're trying to get a degree. We had the same struggles. The difference is, especially when I spoke to my Black counterparts, is that they love the sense of like, oh, culture, quote unquote, that we had at Meharry. Like when we used to go and, hang out after, lab or whatever, they did not have that same that they didn't have that same kind of companionship. And so they always said, hey, can we come over? Can we? And I'm like, yeah, of course, we can hang out and stuff like that. So what I, just to piggyback on Benford, is that this sense of belonging that was there in HBCU, you have to really try to find at a PWI. Not saying that they're bad, but you do have you have to take a little effort to look for it.
And I think it's also important to know that I know Tougaloo does a great job of having international students. So you're at a HBCU, but you can meet people from all over the world.
Absolutely.
And that's not something you can get everywhere. And I think a lot of HBCUs do a great job of that. And I think that's something that really is not emphasized enough. I know Jackson State and Tougaloo both do a wonderful job of bringing in people from every continent.
Yeah, absolutely. That speaks to that opportunity for exposure to diversity, not only just amongst African Americans or the Black diaspora, but you're meeting people from different languages or who speak different languages and different cultural norms that you're being introduced to. So I absolutely agree. I think Coach Gibson has something to contribute.
Oh yeah, well, my experience was, I won't say quite the opposite, but I think in the opposite direction. So when I went, I graduated from Callaway High School, which is a school here in Jackson, and it was predominantly Black. No, it was Black. It was all Black. As a matter of fact, I never sat in the classroom with a white student or any student from another race, for that matter. My entire K-12 experience, all I knew was Black. As a matter of fact, I didn't sit in the classroom, but my senior year at Callaway, the first white student came. So I'm just trying to give you like a backdrop of what my experience was. Moving. Yeah. So when I actually graduated from Callaway, I took a basketball scholarship to Holmes Community College, and that was literally my first time in life sitting in a classroom with a white student. And it was, I think that was the first time that I started to actually see the, I guess I actually started to see like the dichotomy between upbringing, socioeconomic backgrounds, things of that nature, because, it was just a shock to me. Of course, with the school I came up in, when I got to Holmes, it was traditionally, or in the classes that we were in, most of the guys who were in that class who were Black, they were athletes. We were either on the basketball or football team. So just by virtue of where most of us came from, which was similar dynamics from where I came from, we weren't as involved or we weren't as engaged in class. So I think that was the first time, with that being the first, and I think you can respond to that two different ways. You can respond from a way of feeling that you're still inferior. For me, I started to look at it as a challenge. Like I was like, oh no, I don't like the fact that they are more engaged or their GPAs are higher. So I think that was the start of me kind of scratching the surface of another level of potential. So I'm just saying that to say that's how it positively impacted me. But I went from there to Jackson State University. And on the contrary, that's where I think I saw or I established a context for what Black excellence was. And, with that said, man, I met, just like Dr. Whalen and Dr. Benford said, man, I met some of my best friends till this day there. I met people who had, similar goals to me, who had similar paths, and who were just as goal-oriented, had similar work ethics and things of that nature. I was able to pledge a Black Greek letter organization where I started to see excellence on a even higher level. So with that said, then when I transitioned to my master's program, I continued at Jackson State. But the funny thing about it, even though it was an HBCU, it was 10 of us in the program. And I was in history with the focus in civil rights history. There were six white students and 4 Black students in that program. Wow. So I was able to, engage different outlooks on historical data, historical knowledge from different lenses, like through different lens or from different contexts. So how I view Freedom Summer 1964 through the lens of how I came up, how I was raised, how I've been educated up to this point was quite different from how my white counterparts did. But it always made for good conversation, and that was a part of it that I appreciated.
That's incredible. Now, and also, I do want to, because obviously you guys did the student success program. From what you've seen and from what and this new generation of high school students, what does it take to be a successful college student, whether they're at Tougaloo or where, no matter where they choose to go? Because obviously, with technology changing and generations changing, what are some of the things that you're seeing that make students most likely to fail or most likely to succeed?
Fantastic question. Is actually one that we challenge ourselves each and every day of how to make a more impactful connection with students who are in transition. The one thing, and I'll just speak to this one specifically to leave room for everyone else to contribute. I just always say, pick your head up. It's funny that once COVID-19 impacted us globally, students would complain about this idea of social distancing. And I said, well, if you think about it, technology kind of made us socially distance already, because when you walk around on the campus, you'd have AirPods in your ear and you're looking down at your phone. There's a big world like right there in front of you. And yet, as a result of not picking your head up, you're lacking the opportunity to develop those interpersonal skills that Dr. Whalen spoke about. You're missing out on the opportunity to network with someone on your campus who could very well be a business partner later, or an investor in your business, or someone you can collaborate with. So that has been the most unique challenges, that from a social aspect, even to a classroom or academic aspect, I just really want students to lift their heads up and see what's in front of them, to see what's around them, because those things contribute to your overall development, not only just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom as well. But don't become so socially distanced that your life is literally between a 7-9-inch screen, that you're constantly engaged with, versus, actual people that you can learn from, actual experiences that you may create, and memories. And these things, again, help, especially with that transition from high school to college.
Well, I can talk from just having biology freshman students, people who think that they might be interested in getting medical degree or whatever, right? And the one thing that I tell them is, hey, if you try, I'm going to try right along with you. And that's what a lot of students don't understand. Sometimes they feel like, oh, I show up, but no, you got to try a little bit harder, right? Especially, and I tell them, first, you're wanting to get to something that you've never had. Some things are going to be scary, right? You might have to work a little harder. You might have to push through a little bit more. You might have to study with somebody that you don't quite yet know, but she can take notes really, really well, right? And so I think that a lot of my students, especially the ones that do well, and even the ones that have potential, but they didn't get that A, they work hard. They come to my office, they knock on my door, Dr. Whalen, I can't understand this. How do you, and we make up little jingles and songs, and it is okay to study differently, right? Like, if you are a person who needs to draw it out, go to my board and draw it out. If you are a person who needs to rap to a song to study your hey, do it. Do whatever you have to do, because there is no right way to success. And that's what I tell my students all the time. Like, I'm a very I don't know if I'm traditional anymore, because I don't know a lot of people who go straight from undergrad to a PhD, but there are so many different journeys to go and reach your goal. I was in one of my cohort members, well, they were a couple of years after me, was 45 years old getting a PhD. And guess what? They're going to be greater for it at the end of the day. So that journey to success that looks good on Instagram and looks flashy, right, is not always the necessary trip, but what your trip is going to be a testimony to so many other people, right? So I know 45-year-olds that are in PhD. I knew mothers that had 3 children that were in PhDs and had babies in their PhD program. So you can do it. You just got to stick to it. That's all that I say.
Well, I always just like to tell my students, you have to establish a why. And I think your why has to be something that drives your motivation to do things beyond just what it is. For me, I'm big into physical fitness. I work out often. I prioritize my health. I have strict meal regimens. And yes, part of that is because I want to be in Miami this summer on the beach, and I want to look good while I'm there. But my why behind it is because cancer runs in my family. My great granddad had it. My granddad had it. My dad had it. High blood pressure runs in my family. So I literally start to prioritize. My why became I have to break this generational curse. So I think if you establish and invoke a why behind why you do what you do, it'll ensure you some success. So that's what I would implore students to do, even in pursuing degrees in college.
That's awesome.
And Coach Poggett, if I may just add 2 additional things, I would strongly recommend any student, whether they're coming to Tougaloo, which we hope you will choose Tougaloo, but wherever you decide to go, whether it's to continue your education or even you taking on a job, or even a gap year, 2 things that you need to develop is a sense of resiliency and adaptability. Those are crucial.
Absolutely.
Resiliency and adaptability. And a small example is, Tougaloo is well known for producing doctors that come out of Dr. Whalen's general biology class. But yet what we find is that even with valedictorians, and she spoke about it, students who succeeded very well in high school, they may take that entry-level biology course or entry-level course in any particular discipline, and they struggle. And when you're not used to when you're used to having immediate success, it becomes a challenge for them. And that's when we have to help them tap into building that sense, that tough skin, but that level of resiliency, because as we tell them all the time, just because you were successful in one aspect, that doesn't mean that you're going to be immediately successful in the next. And in addition to that, just because you're struggling in one or having challenges in one class, that doesn't mean, you give up on your why, as Coach Gibson stated. You all of a sudden say, I don't want to be a doctor, which I felt like was going to change the generational not curses, but the generational mobility of my family. I gave up on that dream because of this one class. And as far as adaptability, if you are someone who has really, really mastered rote memorization, it is not going to be successful in college, because college is going to challenge you to think critically and really tap into analytical reasoning. So if you've been studying all week, 2 + 3 is 5, 2 + 3 is 5, and then on a test they ask you what's 5 - 3, you can't say, oh, well, that wasn't on the study guide. That's not what we studied. Well, if you know those basic principles of 2 + 3 is 5, just think about it. If you have 5 and you take away 3, what do you have left? So I would strongly recommend that students really, really understand that it's going to require a high level of resiliency, and it's going to require some adaptability in order to be successful as they transition.
That's great, because one thing I noticed is that these kids don't get it right the first time, they're ready to quit. I mean, and especially in the STEM field, I've had in my STEM class, I have a lot of STEM professionals from all over the world, and they say, you're never going to get it right the first time. And look at us, we're making millions of dollars. So, but I do have a few questions from the kids I want to get to, and these are all 9th graders. This first one is Dekala Nettles. She's one of our top students in the school right now. And this is a great question. She asked, how do you deal with students who are confused about what major they should choose?
Coach Gibson, you want to take this one, or should I? Either or. My recommendation is for us here at Tougaloo, it's absolute exposure. So what we attempt to do is we collaborate with the Dr. Whalen's in natural sciences, which incorporates not only biology, but chemistry, physics, computer science, mathematics. And what we do through those relationships with our faculty members is we allow them after the first semester of their freshman year, we begin to co-collaborate with those faculty members for academic advising and career advising. So the exposure piece for us at Tougaloo is absolutely important. And in addition to that, we really tap into our younger and older alumni groups to make sure that students are being exposed to actual career options that are aligned with majors. So, we also just ask students to pace themselves. You don't have to know immediately. I mean, I used to want to be the next Stuart Scott when I was in college, and here I am, an educator. As Dr. Whalen said, your trip looks a little bit different, but have patience, but also exposure. And like I said, I think those 2 things we do very well here at Tougaloo.
Anybody else have an answer on that one? Because I got another question.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. All right. Well, this is Kawaya Cooper, and this is a great question for a professional. She asked, "How do you manage your time as a student success coach and a baseball coach?"
Now that is quite a challenge, but I'm going to ask Coach Gibson to answer this one. One of the reasons because he's a student success coach and he's also an entrepreneur, so he has quite more tasks and responsibilities than I from a student success coach and a baseball standpoint. But if he will, I'll ask him to lend some advice there.
So for me, great question, by the way. For me, I think one, your goals have to be clear. You have to know what you want, and then be overly intentional about prioritizing how you get there. And once you do that, one of the things that, you know, I always said that, I mean, my goals are clear. I want to make a lot of money. I want to help a lot of people. And one thing that I notice about a lot of the millionaires in my life, or the people who are wealthy, is they are literally married to their routine. So that's what I would say. I would say you have got to get a routine. You've got to commit to it, be intentional about executing it. And you can tell, like for me, my days are literally the same every single day. My alarm goes off at 3:45 in the morning. I'm out the house at 4:30. I have a class to work out from 5 to 6. When I get home, I eat breakfast, I take a shower. By 6:45, I'm reading my devotional. I'm putting my clothes on. I'm at work by 8. I have things I'm doing throughout the day. And I literally put point by point what I have to do for that day. I can show you my to-do list for today, and it'll tell you what I'll be doing at 11:45. Today at 11:45, I'll be over in our new office, cleaning the floor. So I'm intentional about developing a routine and sticking to it. And I don't think the developmental stage is as hard as the sticking to it stage. So that's what I would implore my dear sister to do. Just make sure you get that routine, be intentional about executing it, and stick to it.
Look, my question to you is, what time do you go to sleep if you got to wake up at 3:45 in the morning?
And that's where another layer of discipline comes in there. My goal is I'm always sleep by 10 o'clock. Now, you know, things happen and I'm not, but I exercise the same level of discipline to being in the bed by about 9:30 and being asleep by 10.
You got to do the same thing, and you got to do the same thing in college. I mean, it's you got to get on a routine.
You have to.
This is a great question from Kamiria Smith. She's actually one of our athletes as well. And she asked, when you were a student at Tougaloo, did you also, when you were a student at Tougaloo, did you want to work there?
Of course, I'll be honest, and I think a lot of students who graduate from Tougaloo have the aspiration to come back and work. And I also think that's partially not only exclusively at HBCUs, but if you develop an attachment to your institution, naturally you want to come back. And for myself, and I know Dr. Whalen, it's been a very unique experience because, you know, every time I see a student, I think I've graduated from the stage where I used to see them as little brother, little sister, to now it's like, you know, I get called Papa Benford sometimes, you know, but you're always thinking this is the next generation of the fold. And as we say commonly here, you know, they're from the soil, and being from the soil means that we got to continue to nurture the soil. So it's a very, very unique experience. And someone who played baseball here, that's a very, very fun aspect of the job, is that I get to now recruit student athletes to come be a part of a history that I helped contribute to during my playing days. So yes, while I was a student here, I could always think, oh man, you know, I could always work here. I could teach or something like that. I could coach. And fortunately enough, Diva spoke about this earlier, or Dr. Whalen spoke about this earlier. When you develop those unique relationships with your faculty members, your advisors, and even co-advisors in Black Greek letter organizations, what you begin to see is you start to mirror yourself, and you see yourself in them or vice versa. And for that reason, you could always see yourself in those shoes. So yes, I definitely could have saw, you know, kind of anticipated that in some capacity, I will find myself working here.
For me, yes, the same. I definitely thought I was going to work here because I had professors, like Dr. Benford said, that I was just totally enamored by, honestly. Like, I've always wanted to teach, and I've always wanted to teach on the greatest level. And the most enlightenment, the most nurturing that I got was at my institution. And I just wanted to pour that back into my institution. And especially because, especially in the STEM, so in the biologies, the chemistries, a lot of times when you have your professors, they don't necessarily look like you. A lot of the professors are not even necessarily white. They might be African, or they might be Asian American, and sometimes there's a language barrier there. And I have a lot of students that complain about that. But if I can be the one to say, yeah, I understand that there's a language barrier, so let me show you according to the book how you can actually relate to them. I think that my place here is to make sure that they're not afraid of going into another institution or another person's class and saying, well, they don't talk Black, right? Or they don't talk how I want to talk. And so they can still, get an A, get a B in the next class.
Well, guys, we're almost out of time, and we thank all three of y'all for joining us today. And we'd love to have some of y'all on campus next year now that we've lifted our COVID regulations. But before we go, and all three resumes of y'all just make me feel stupid how intelligent and successful y'all are. So congratulations to all three of you in that regard. But for anybody watching now and watching later, everybody watching with me now are young Black kids in Mississippi, like all of you were. And Benford, you went to the same school district, same area, but you faced a lot of obstacles being a Black student in the South. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when these obstacles are going to be faced. So what can these kids do now to be just as successful as the three of you?
I would say, again, identify role models. We host what we call a think tank series here. Myself, Coach Gibson, and Coach Earl Sanders, our head baseball coach and director of student engagement. And during these think tank series, we challenge students to identify whether a role model or some aspect of things going on around them that they can aspire for. It's just absolutely important to understand that your story is your story, and the best person to write it is you. Don't give in to influences. When you see positive influences, take what's good. But again, as Dr. Whalen said, your trip is your trip. And I would just say something that I actually learned from you, Coach Pygott, in our days of working at Applebee's together: persistence. When you used to share your story about leaving Austin Peay just on a whim and taking a leap of faith, but it was your determination and persistence that always stood out to me when you went from a server to a bartender. And then also this grind that you demonstrate, continuously, whether it's Uber, and I know you can still, wait on a table at any given day, but that level of persistence is what's going to be required, because history repeats itself. You're just going to see it in a different form. So these challenges that maybe your ancestors had faced, you're going to see them, but you're going to see them in a different way. But you need that same level of persistence that they demonstrate as well.
Well, our time's about to run out, and we thank all three of y'all for joining us again. And like I said, and I appreciate the kind words, Dr. Benford, but thank you guys so much. You guys are doing some great things at Tougaloo. And I will talk to you soon, my friend.
All right. Y'all have a great one. Thank you all for having us.
See ya.